Today's guest conversation is with one of the most decorated, well-known pitching coaches in the history of college baseball, Mr. Brent Kemnitz of Wichita State University. Here's episode 62 of the Baseball Forward podcast. And Coach, I have to edit that. I have to say, the winningest pitching coach in Division I history. How are you, Coach Kemnitz?
I'm great. Good day. Thrilled you're having me on. You know what's funny about the winningest pitching coach in the history of college baseball? Here's how that came about. I was introducing or talking about Gene. I was at a speech in Wichita in January of 07. And I was told that, hey, dude, you need to put together a CD, and they were a big deal at the time, on all your mental stuff.
Okay.
And mechanics too. So I said, yes. I brought in a professional guy to tape it and ended up, getting pitching the mental game, and it had a lot of success. But I had a pro guy there taping it, so I'm trying to be on my best A game. And I'm talking about Gene and, what a great, opportunity he gave me. And I said, Gene is the second winningest coach in the history of college baseball. I mean, we're talking Noah, Moses, everybody ever. Okay. And Gary Ward's heard that and absolutely laughed so hard when I told him that and let him listen to the CD. But I said, he's number two behind Augie Garrido. And then I stopped in the middle of my speech and I said, you know what? Augie's had several different pitching coaches. I guess that makes me the winningest pitching coach in the history of college baseball. So I kind of had fun with that. And Andy Dirks, one of our former players, who's now the color guy for the Tigers, All-American here, played in the big leagues. He was doing a podcast called Get Your Game Right. And he recruited me to be his pitching guy.
Wow.
So he's the one that ran with that. I said, dude, you might do a little research. I think it's true. But he did, and we ran with that. And what's funny is me, Jim, and Willie were actually doing a little research Saturday to make sure it was true.
Yep.
And it is. So
Heck yeah.
Let's go with it.
Hey, I'm going with it. And hey, I want to say this because for me, truly, Coach, hey, college baseball, man, I started to fall in love with college baseball because of Wichita State University. Coach, I can tell you, I remember, was it 89, Creighton, the World Series, that guy coming around third base that got thrown out at the plate. I'm telling you, it is an honor for me to get to talk to you because just call it what it is, man. You have been to the mountaintop. You are one of the greatest to ever do it, and it is an absolute honor to chat with you this morning. So that said, you're also for the last 9 years, you've been the assistant athletic director for outreach and staff development. So, man, you're a Wichita State lifer.
Well, that's for sure. And to back up, thank you so much for the 89 props. That's the year we won it.
Yep.
And then 91's the year that the guy, Jim Audley, threw out the Creighton runner at home plate.
There you go.
And what's interesting about that is Jim Hendry, the coach for Creighton at the time, who was the GM for the Cubs and is now a special assistant to the Yankees, is a dear friend of mine. And we still talk about those days, and he was one of the best to ever do it. But yes, and a lot of people still think that's the best College World Series game ever in 91 because Creighton was there, and Rosenblatt, who'd always loved us.
That's right.
Because we were in the Valley. All of a sudden it's Creighton, but it was still great. But to get to the second piece here, yes, I'm assistant AD for outreach and staff development. Everybody says, well, what's that mean? Well, raise money. Anytime you can go out and get people to give back to the school, and we always have projects going, and we have a big black and yellow gala in August, and golf tournaments and banquets, and I stir the pot and get people there. And I love people. I always say, I'm a little different. The three things I'm comfortable with: pitching coach. Nobody wants to be a pitching coach. Number two, I like public speaking. Nobody likes that. And three, I'm not afraid to ask people for money.
That's a good combo.
Yeah. When they see Brent Kemnitz walk into the room, they go, oh my God, he's going to try to get my wallet. They just don't know how. But I'm having a blast. It's already my 9th year, travel with basketball. Willie Schwanke goes with us. He's like the content producer. So really close to Willie. Absolutely love him. But I'm having a blast. I'm 68. but I'm around young people every day of my life. So my brain's about 23.
Hey, and you know what? You've got the energy, you've got that passion. I'm ready to like go play or do something. Hey, I want to hey, just the current state of baseball. There's so many things I want to talk to you about and I want to pick your brain on. But as I'm going through and I'm prepping for the podcast, coach, man, something really stood out to me and I'm like, "Holy cow." In 1982, a Coach Kemnitz coached team, Wichita State, your staff had 46 complete games in 1982. So I want to start there. I miss that baseball. Where did that baseball go?
Man, that's how I grew up, man. I was the 60s guy, Bob Gibson, Juan
Yes.
Marichal, Mickey Lulich, Denny McLean. You can go on and on. But that's there. I grew up. I was 4 to 14 in the 60s. And I knew every major league lineup, the rotation, everything. I was a San Francisco Giants fan, Willie Mays.
Yeah.
24, and that's my number, what's my number here, Wichita State. But to get to kind of on point here, in those days, you just give you the ball and it's like, go get, there was no bullpen or
Yep.
like Bob Gibson completed virtually every game.
Mm-hmm.
So then that carried on into the 70s. Now we would give guys, we'd make sure they got the 3 days rest in between. It was kind of a 3-day rest thing. Now it seems like they need a week.
Yep.
But in 1982, I'm a 25-year-old,
Wow.
I was pitching coach my graduate assistant year, so that's
Wow.
legit. From day one, Gene gave me the pitchers.
Wow.
And I always joked and I said he didn't know if I was any good. He just thought we were going to outscore everybody. And he didn't want to deal with pitchers. But, Gene gave me an opportunity. But in 82, I'm a 25-year-old assistant. And everything came together that year. We had a senior-laden team. Charlie O'Brien was senior, Phil Stephenson senior, Jimmy Thomas senior. And then on the pitching staff, Don Heinkel, who's the winningest, I'm the winningest pitching coach. I love it when people lead with that. But Don won 51 games, and that was his senior year at Wichita State, which is still the NCAA record. He was here all 4 years. He's a doctor living in Alabama. Actually did pitch in the big leagues, was an All-American. He anchored that staff. We knew what we were getting with him going into the year. And another guy that we thought was really going to be good was a kid named Eric Sonberg. Okay. Eric was a Tulsa kid, Tulsa Kelly. He'd had a good freshman year. So he goes into his sophomore year, and we're thinking, okay, Sonberg's really going to be able to dominate and be good. Well, he didn't disappoint. He, I think, was 17-3. I think Heinkel was 16-5. Boy. I think Sonberg was 17-3. The next year, he was the first-round draft, the pick ahead of Clemens, but got hurt. It was the first-round pick of the Dodgers. And then the other guy that really he really made a huge jump was a kid named Brian Elkers. Okay. He, as a sophomore, he had a decent freshman year. As a sophomore, he struggled. His numbers were not good. But he was determined. Everybody, if you ask anybody what Kemnitz is about, Brent Kemnitz will say, well, he's a brain guy. And I am. I love that. I take pride in that. But with that being said, mechanics is very important as well. And I bring that up because I had to get Elkers off of the mechanics. He would arch off, and he was left-handed. I said, dude, as far as you're arching off, it's almost like you're right-handed. Wow. So we would do the old video, keep your shoulders level, hips level, stay back, all the stuff, and we'd video it. Now, it's old school. If you try to pull some of that stuff up today, it'd be comical. I'd love to see it. But he figured it out in the fall and continued to pitch he pitched all through the winter. Well, to speed up the story, he was 18-2. Holy cow. He was college pitcher of the year. Attaboy. And was the 4th pick in the draft, picked by the Twins, to pick ahead of Dwight Gooden. Wow. So with those 3 guys on a weekend rotation, it was like a fist fight if you try to get them out of the game. If you go to them and say, hey, man, you're at 107 pitches, we're going to go ahead and go to the bullpen. It was like, oh, no, they'd go crazy, which you love that. Okay. Yes. And don't get me wrong, I love those guys putting up zeros. So we had 3 All-Americans on the weekend. Wow. And to be fair, we did in those days play some 7-inning doubleheaders, which made it a little easier. But on weekends, league games and that kind of thing, and obviously NCAA tournament, they were 9-inning games. That year, with that rotation that I just talked about,
Wow.
we go to New Orleans in '82 for the regional. And New Orleans was loaded. They had a guy named Augie Schmidt. I think he was the second pick. And he
Okay.
could have been the mayor of New Orleans. So we
Love it.
go down there and play, but we're really good. A lot of seniors, a lot of older guys, and a dominant pitching staff, which did lead the nation in the ERA. But anyway, with first game, Don Heinkel shuts out Jackson State. Second game, Brian Elker shuts out a really good New Orleans team.
Wow.
Both complete games. So we
Wow.
go to the third game, throw Sonberg against
Wow.
New Orleans again, and it was a 4-team regional. And he goes 7 shutout innings, but he's thrown like 118 pitches or something.
Okay.
So we hook him, okay? And he to this day, he goes crazy on me. He says, dude, because the reliever came in the 8th and gave up a solo home run, and then we throw up a 0 in the 9th. But we did give up 1 run in 3 games, 27 innings. But Eric Sonberg, to this day, gives me a hard time about that. He says, yeah, if you wouldn't have hooked me, we wouldn't have given up a run.
Wow.
But yeah,
what a staff.
It's funny, and we talk about this all the time. You recruit really good pitchers, you're all of a sudden a really good pitching coach. Yeah,
Funny how that
I'd say, hey, you put Dreifert and Pelfrey and some of those guys on the mound. Kemnitz is a genius. So you better get some dudes, But I always try to talk about the levels. So I took a lot of pride in that as well.
Man, I'll tell you what, talking with Coach Brent Kemnitz, the legend from Wichita State, your energy just permeates. I love it, man. I'm fired up. I want to give you kind of a full circle story for me. And I played at Kansas State my senior year. I was drafted by the Dodgers, and then played briefly with them for a while. But I remember Jamie Bluma. When I watched the World Series growing up, I remember this dude, something about a lizard or something, but I remember Jamie Bluma. I was like, man, that guy's a stud. Okay. So I get done with pro ball, and like a year later, one of my buddies in Kansas City, I was living in Overland Park. He says, hey, Ross, come play in this men's league game. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that, man. I'm anyway, I end up going and playing in this men's league, and I go in there, and I didn't know that who was going to be there. And I'm sitting in the dugout, and I'm thinking men's league. And I look out on the mound. I'm like, man, that dude's throwing it pretty good. Like, that's pretty good stuff.
Pretty firm.
Hey, he comes in. He's like, hey, I'm Jamie. I'm like, what? Jamie. Hey, I'm Jamie Bluma. I'm like, no way. Jamie Bluma was like a dude that I looked up to from Wichita State because of the World Series. And then fast forward to the early 2000s, and I'm playing in a men's league in Overland Park, Kansas. And I look out and I see Jamie Bluma on the bump just dealing.
That's so funny. The whole Bluma thing, we had 3 brothers. Jeff Bluma, the oldest, was on our national championship team, was here 4 years. Bullpen guy, just knew what you're going to get, not overpowering, like 85, 88, strike thrower, 3 pitches for a strike. You give him 2 or 3 innings, and he could go virtually every game, but a really, really nice career for us. And then Jamie was second, and he came right after Jeff, okay? So he was here 4 years as well and had a great career. We had Dreifert and Bluma both in the bullpen. That makes you smart. But anyway, Jamie, he had that little short, quick arm action, really deceptive, had a great career. But what's funny, what you said about him having frogs and lizards and stuff in the bullpen, he was as free spirit as you're going to get. He had frogs and stuff in the bullpen. He wore his hat backwards. And a lot of scouts would say, Kemnitz, man, you're very, you're organized, and you're very, old school guy. Why do you let that guy get by with wearing his hat backwards, warming up? So I told the scout this, and I told Jamie this many times. I said, dude, you know why it's entertaining that you have frogs in the bullpen? I said, you want to know why it's entertaining that you warm up with your hat on backwards and then turn it around right before you go on the mound? I said, because you never blow a save.
Wow.
I said, you deal. You are money when you go in. I said, the minute that the results aren't there, everybody's going to think you're a bad teammate. They're going to think you're selfish. I said, so it's entertaining because you're totally dealing. Okay. Yep. And I said, the minute that you're not doing results, people are going to look at you as a problem. So that's why I let him do it his whole career. Had an amazing career. And yes, he was a free spirit, but he was also a great teammate.
Wow. I love hearing that. I love hearing that. Talking with Coach Brent Kemnitz, episode 62 of the Baseball Forward podcast today. Coach, boy, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, bring up, because in my eyes, you're man, what you guys have accomplished, what you guys did at Wichita State. Coach Gene Stephenson. Talk to me a little bit about that relationship and what Coach Stephenson means to the Wichita State baseball program.
Well, Gene Stephenson, to me, you have the Mount Rushmore of college baseball. He's certainly one of the guys on it. And, you got the Gary Wards, you got the Ron Frazier's, you got the Cliff Gustafsons. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are just crucial for the development of college baseball. Well, Gene's certainly one of those guys. And I always joke, I MC a lot of events. And when Gene's in attendance, I will always say, okay, when Brent Kemnitz has the mic, two things will always happen. Number one, I will give him his props. Mount Rushmore college baseball, maybe the best to ever do it. Gave me an opportunity that I can't thank him enough for. And number two, I will never hand him the mic because he's got a little Gary Ward in him. And Gary's wonderful. Me and Jim and Willie Schwanke were laughing over the weekend about how, I played American Legion baseball at Stillwater in 72, 73, wow. 74, 75, 4 years. And Bill Platt was the radio guy. And then you got the whole Ron, Tony, Rex. So I go way back in Stillwater. But I used to laugh so hard when they'd ask him one question and he'd cover like 40 minutes. And it was entertaining. Well, Gene's the same guy, okay? So I always laugh, and I go, I'm never giving Gene the mic. Of course, everybody loves that. But to get back on track here, Gene, I mean, his record speaks for itself, and like I say, I can't thank him enough for the opportunity. But you talk about a true baseball guy, the way he managed the dugout, the way the expectation to win, great feel. I thought he did a great job. As pitching coach, he gave me free reign, but as manager, he had the final say on, hooking guys. Yep. But he would go with what I said, but sometimes, he would go with his gut, and he did a great job managing a team and the pitchers from a head coach standpoint. But the other thing that maybe isn't mentioned as much, he did more to promote the game. And us playing Oklahoma State in those early years in the 80s, a great neighborhood rivalry, but top 10 teams. And Gary and Gene were all about it, man. And it was competitive, and there was off the chart respect. But it was like, boy, it was intense. And people loved that, but it built the game. And just the facilities and the pushing back the season and speeding up the game. There were so many things that Gene was a part of just to build college baseball. Yeah. And he never held me back. I had my own radio show, my own pitching coach.
Wow.
And Gene was all for it. He said, hey, a lot of guys' egos were like, no, that needs to be the head coach. Gene said, hey, if it's helping promote us, go for it.
Wow.
And like I mentioned, I did a CD and I did so many different things, but it was Gene that always gave me the green light. So he was a great guy to work for. He gave me, like I said earlier, I was a pitching coach at 21. Wow. Coming out of Phillips University, I got a great recommendation from my American Legion pitching coach, Bill Brown, who had coached Gene in American Legion baseball in the early 60s.
Wow.
But Gene gave them to me. And here's the thing that Gene Stephenson would do. He empowered you. It was like there was high expectations. You better have a crazy work ethic, and we better win. And we did. But it was like he empowered you. He pretty much gave me free reign with the pitchers on who to recruit, how to handle them, how to develop them. So can't thank him enough. Still see him regularly, but one of the truly best, if not the best ever.
Man, shout out to Coach Gene Stephenson. What an absolute legend. I'm curious because from where I sit, I'm a 45-year-old man. I have two kids that love the game, 10 and 11-year-old boys. And I I try to slow down, coach, and try to enjoy the moment and like really appreciate what's going on in the moment. And I'm curious, for someone of your stature and everywhere you've been and kind of all the accomplishments, do you ever take the time to just like sit back and say, holy cow, what was that all about? Like because you won't say it, you're humble about it, but you guys shaped the game of college baseball. Like what we watch on TV right now is because of what you guys were doing. Do you ever reflect and say, boy, that was a good ride?
Yes. Now, the answer is yes. Now,
Good.
as an assistant AD,
Yeah.
when I was coaching, no
Okay.
chance. Because I also coordinated recruiting here. So, for over 30 years for Jeans, you're always trying to feed the monster, so to speak. It's like, we got to go find this in the summer, and you're on a sprint, and you're trying to find dudes.
Yep.
And then you got to develop them. And, we went to Omaha 7 times, 5 out of 6 years. So it's one of those deals where you're always feeding the monster. There's just high expectations from the fans, but also from self pressure. Your expectation. So when you're coaching, I don't think you enjoy the journey. And that's one of the things is when I speak, that's one of my big deals for young. I spoke to a Little League team last week, and that was one of my big deals. Be a good teammate, but enjoy the journey. Yeah. And now I look back, and it's not like we didn't have fun. We had fun. I mean, it was a free-spirited group, and the numbers speak for themselves. But I think the thing that sticks with you are the relationships, the friendships, the people that you go see, and the guys that come into town. And now I'm like on them, hey, we need you to get a foursome. We need you to buy a table. We need you to do this. We need you to buy tickets. And I'm having fun with it. And it's not just baseball. I'm friends with a lot of the basketball alums and other sports. But it's interesting you say that, because I'm very blessed that I still work at Wichita State. Yeah. I told Kevin Saul, the AD, it's his 3rd year. I said, hey, man, thanks for putting up with me. I said, but if you ever think I should retire, tell me. I'll go out. You always see, occasionally you'll see some coaches that kind of get pushed out, and then they're mad at everybody from then on. I said, I don't want to be that guy. I said, if you ever say it's time to retire, I'll say all the right things. I'm blessed. He's like, I don't want you to retire.
No.
Because he knows I'm still passionate, but I do enjoy it, and I'm still around it. So I think the fact that it's my 9th year, so that makes 47 years at Wichita State. Man. The last few for sure. And it's great to see people and kind of reminisce and tell stories. And like earlier this week, Jim Schwanke's in town. Yep. Willie's, pitched here, great pitcher. Now he's, one of our content producers. Yep. Title, but puts out amazing work. But we get into all the stories, and it's just so much fun. And Jim, he's a humble guy, but I said, I look at Willie, I go, your dad was like the best hitting coach in the country. So Jim should love me. I'm always propping him up. But he's a great guy. I've got to know him, and that's so much fun. And then a couple of years ago, I go down, Wichita State's playing at a break, and I go out and make a point to go see Tom Holliday. Okay. And me and Tom, man, it was intense in the 80s. And I go into the booth, and he gives me a hug, and he's great. And he, I guess on the air, he told people during his broadcast, he was giving me some love, giving me some props. He said, yeah, we weren't allowed to like each other back in the 80s, but we really do, So that was cool. And I mentioned Gary. He's been up here a couple times. Great storyteller, phenomenal coach. So it's fun to see those people off the field, because, you share the same passion. But it's great stories. So, and the stories get better as the years go on. I found that out a long time ago, but that's okay.
That's a fact. Talking with Coach Brent Kemnitz of Wichita State University, episode 62 of the Baseball Forward podcast today. Coach, you kind of started into it about like the why was Wichita State so stinking good for so long, and I want to know, like, break that down for me and give me some more insight into, because I think a lot of people that listen to this, there are a lot of coaches that'll listen to this, and they're young, they're trying to find their way. Boy, what you guys did worked. What was kind of the formula that you guys had that you followed for so long?
as I mentioned, I went to Perry High School, graduated in '74. Played American Legion at Stillwater. Was blessed to have great coaches. Tom Borland was my pitching coach for
Dang,
Stillwater American Legion. He's one of the four numbers, retired at O'Brien. Okay,
crazy.
well, he's my pitching guy, so I constantly picked his brain. He was so good to me. Then I mentioned Bill Brown was my pitching coach in college, a legendary American Legion coach. But I graduate from Phillips, and my dream was Oklahoma. Okay, wanted to go to OU. I did
Okay.
talk to Chet Bryant at Oklahoma State, but my dream was OU. Well, they didn't recruit me. So Gene being Gene, I asked him later, I said, man, my dream was OU. Well, you never talked to him. He said, you weren't good enough. So, but he was right. But I had a really good career at Phillips. But my senior year in '78, the fall of '77, reality kicked in. Okay, you're not going to be this big league pitcher.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a pro guy. So I started writing places to go to grad school.
Okay.
Okay. And my coach was a guy named Joe Record, who's in the NAIA Hall of Fame. And in those years, we beat a lot of Division Ones because not as many were taking it serious. So we
Sure.
were a really good small college program. Okay. Well, I go to my coach and I say, hey, I know the pro thing's not going to work, which, I hate that, but I'd like to get into coaching. So I'm writing some schools about going to get my master's degree. So I wrote Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Norm DeBryan at Arkansas. And it was
Oh.
Enos Seymour at Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And he said, you know what? That's great. Good for you. That's smart. And they were handwritten old school notes. He said, but I would add Wichita State. He
Hmm.
said, they must be serious because they hired Gene Stephenson. And he
Hmm.
took the job, I think it was February, March of '77, didn't have a team, didn't have anything. And he was the recruiting coordinator at Oklahoma. So I write him a handwritten note, and he gave me the best, most personal response back, which has taken me to my point, his attention to detail. And it's
Hmm.
not letting anything go unturned. I'm a Phillips University guy, Perry, Oklahoma, small town America, and I'm writing him, but he treated me like a rock star. I came up here in December of '77, my senior year. He showed me around, and fortunately, Bill Brown did give me a really good recommendation. But I remember talking to Gene, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he ends up giving me an opportunity. But it was like, if you want to be a part of this, that's beautiful. But here's what I'm going to do. Not what
Okay.
I want to do. Here's what's going to happen.
Wow.
It reminded me of the Barry Switzer days in '70 as an Oklahoma football fan. It's like, hey, if you want to be a part of it, great. But here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
So there was a little cockiness, a little swag, but I think you've got to have that.
Yep.
And he just laid it out. And from a recruiting standpoint, I remember him handing me a list of scouts, and there was probably 100 scouts on the list.
Wow.
He said, you got to get to know these guys. This is how we find out about our players. You got to figure out which
Ooh.
scout's word means the most, but get to know these guys. I'm like 21, 22, and I got a list of like 100 scouts and became friends with tons of them. But that was kind of our recruiting angle. Now it's, showcases different
Yep.
services, which is okay, whatever. It's a
Yep.
different time. But in those days, it was pro scouts. And then we'd go see the guys. So I think it's just an insane work ethic, going
Hmm.
to see guys, being relentless. And he was big on getting athletes, guys that could really run. And from a pitching standpoint, I think I was blessed with an ability to kind of pick and choose guys and pick the right ones. We all want
Interesting.
to talk about the ones we got right, but we
Sure.
all miss on some guys.
Sure.
Okay. I always say Brad Penny. I was kind of so on Brad Penny, broken arrow guy.
Yep.
Who ends up, he was real interested in Wichita State, and we didn't offer him. So
Wow.
everybody likes
Wow.
to talk about the ones that get right. You don't get
Yeah.
them all right, but I think we got most of them right. But I think just the work ethic, and he was a big guy in development. He had a great job of developing teams and motivating. And I think that I had that ability as a pitching coach. And like I say, once I proved myself, he gave me full reign, and he empowered me.
Man.
And for here's the other thing. Uh, I didn't have a cookie cutter approach, and neither did Gene.
Okay.
Gene was like, okay, figure out what makes each guy work. Okay, it's like, okay, this may work for this guy, this may work for this guy, and like I say, he liked guys who could run. because speed doesn't go in a slump. But from a pitching standpoint, I didn't have a cookie cutter approach. Everybody, from a physical and a mental standpoint, everybody was different. And some guys, and I'd get asked this from parents when they'd come in, they said, well, what's your recruiting philosophy? Well, at 21, you don't have one because you've just been a player.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So I knew coming in, my first year was kind of like, okay, I'm going to treat these guys like I'm an older guy, like a senior. I had guys on the staff older than me that I lived in the
Wow.
dorm with.
Dang.
But I knew that I pumped them up and like said, dude, man, you got good stuff. And, that kind of started my style or approach, because like I say, everybody knows Kemnitz a brain guy. Okay. So from a mental standpoint, I would tell parents when they'd ask me my style, I'd say my style is what's going to make your son work from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint. From a physical standpoint, you got to be under control. You got to get to a good balanced position. You got to throw downhill. Everybody gets there different. You want to finish online. Everybody gets there different. And I'd start throwing up different big league guys and just say, hey, they all look different, but those things are crucial. So I'm going to figure out what makes your son work. Okay. From a mental standpoint, I said, I prefer the hug you and love you style. But if I have to get on you, I will. And everybody thinks you're a hug them and love them style guy, which some were, but
Sure.
some you had to get on them pretty hard and figure out what buttons to push. So I had a very individualized style, which was harder. It'd be easier to say, well, you're going to conform to
Sure.
me. I'm a
Yeah.
cookie. Here's my
Man, no kidding.
here's my philosophy.
Yep.
Well, my philosophy was what made each guy click. And Gene empowered me once again. You said, what made it go? It was just a relentless work ethic, great development of players, picking the right guys. We weren't hung up that you had to be this, whatever. We wanted athletes. He a lot of times you look at a Pat Mears or a Mike Lansing or a PJ Forbes. Those guys played all the sports and they were just athletes. And from a pitching standpoint, I didn't get overly concerned about velocity. I like velocity as much as the next guy. I had 9 first-round drafts. To be a first-round draft, you got to have velo. I had 19 guys that pitched in the big leagues, so you got to probably have velo.
Yeah.
But I was more of okay, so how's the arm work? Is there capabilities for command, pitchability, makeup, etc.?
Man, I want to go down this track with you because I want to know, like, even if you're watching, and I'm sure you still evaluate. So, like, when you're watching a guy work and you're watching a guy throw, like, what are you looking for that are kind of the cues that say, hey, I think he might have a chance, or hey, maybe not him? What are you looking for out of pitchers?
I've said this many times. When I did a million pitching camp, I started a pitching camp, my one-day pitching camp in '88. And I remember Dreifert was like a sophomore in high school. He came. I would have known about him anyway. Shane Dennis, I probably wouldn't have. Small town, Uniontown, Kansas guy. Bluma, I would have known about because his brother was here. But to get to my point, these guys would all come to my pitching camp. And I told them, because everybody, they're coming to the camp because they're prospect age and they want to get recruited. What I would say to them is a couple different things. I would say, when I go watch a kid, a lot of times I have made up my mind if I want him before the game's ever started.
Really?
Yes, because a couple things. When somebody would tell me about a kid, I'd ask 2 questions. How is he as a student? What's his GPA? And number 2, is he a good teammate? Okay. That's the first 2 questions. And I'd share this with guys who came to camp or when I'd speak at clinics or whatever. So that was before I ever got to the park. And then when I got to the park, I'd always try to get there early. And I wanted to see who was out there trying to fire the team up, who was like ready to go. And also the guys who were dragging in late, because those negative energy guys kill you. So we wanted the positive energy guys. Okay. So then from a pitching standpoint, it was a lot easier. And I would go evaluate hitters some, but as a pitching coach, even though I was a recruiting coordinator and coordinated all of it, pitchers were easier for me. Because if you go watch a hitter, sometimes they walk 3 times.
Sure.
And you're supposed to figure out what they look
Good
like
point.
when they're on deck taking their hacks, pitchers, you're going to see
That's right.
them warm up. You're going to see them in the game. And I did like the game setting as opposed to a tryout or a, area code tryout or showcase or whatever, because I want to see how they reacted in game situations. But to get to my point, when they would play catch, I could see how their arm worked. I could see warming up, how everything worked. So a lot of times I'd say, okay, I know what their velo is going to be. It's going to be good enough. I already see their numbers. I've already did some background stuff. So I guess I was an analytics guy way back when, because
Yeah.
I do research on, okay, how is he? And when I was younger, I probably didn't get as worried about that. But when I got older, I wanted to know, okay, is he a strike thrower? It's a red flag for me if he's got a power arm, but he can't throw strikes, because that's going to be hard to correct at 21 or
Boy.
22.
Yes.
Okay. So I did do some research on that, but just the way their arm worked. And then I was a big guy on playing catch, long catch. So I think it was just the athleticism as a position guy, but a pitcher too. But just the way the arm worked.
Boy, I want to ask you this question now. I'm talking with Coach Brent Kemnitz of Wichita State University, episode 62 of the Baseball Forward podcast. You talk about playing catch, Coach. Like, you catch it, you throw it, you hit it, right? Basic stuff, Bull Durham type stuff. But boy, playing catch, the older I get, the more I realize how important playing catch is. So put that into the context of, like, when you're looking at a pitcher, like, how important is playing good catch to you? And what does that look like to you?
It's everything. Like I said, I spoke to a Little League team last week, and I always start my speeches out, one of the first things I talk about is playing catch the proper way. You get the ball in your hand, thumb underneath, two fingers on top, across the seam grip, so the ball comes out true and clean. You don't want a slider spin. You don't want screwball spin. Stay behind it. Get it out on your fingertips. Comes out true and clean. It's going to give you the best lift, the best carry, the best velo. It's going to be straighter, but it's going to be the easiest to command. And then obviously as they get older, you get into two seam and, different grips and this and that.
Sure.
But I always say at a young age, play catch the proper way, thumb underneath, two fingers on top, comes out clean. It's the mechanics. Step to who you're throwing to. You don't jump. You step, level hips, shoulders, eyes. Get the good front side. You finish. You stay behind it. And I always tell them this. I say, okay, you guys are 9 years old. I said, but if I was speaking to a big league team, it'd be the exact same speech.
Man.
Play catch the right way. You see, even at the big league level, you'll see guys lazy with their catch. That's how you get bad habits. You get you don't have your elbow up. You get under it. You're chatting with your buddy about what you're going to do that night. It's just lazy catch.
Yep, that's right.
Play catch the right way. Stay behind the ball, extend it into long catch, and then have fun with it. Put your glove up, play games. All right, you got to hit my spot, and you can have fun with catch. But I'm going to say right now, that's probably, I stress that, and that's pitcher, catcher, shortstop, outfielder, anybody, play catch the right way.
Boy, that's big. That's huge, man. And coming from you, like, that is gold. So a couple more. Hey, we got about 10 more minutes here, Coach Kemnitz, if even. I want a couple more questions. Baseball Forward, what Coach Schwanke and Coach Ward and I are doing. Our motto is elevating the next generation. The goal is super positive. We want to move this game forward in the right direction. And I'm honored to just be whatever part I'm playing in it. It blows my mind that I get to have these conversations. I'm so thankful for it. Elevating the next generation. So if you were here and you were talking to a room of 1,000 just baseball players, middle school aged, high school aged baseball players before college, what would your advice be to those baseball players to kind of lift them up and elevate them?
What a great question. And you mentioned Gary, and it's like the sequential unlocking of body parts to maximize bat speed at point of contact, drive on, playing on whatever rhythm. And I've heard Gary say that. And Gary is so smart, but he's just such a good, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah,
same way with Jim Schwanke. I mean, amazing hitting guys. And trying to get their guys out. I mean, they'd spit on a pitch like a half inch off the plate. And it's like, they take it deep in the counts. And, so there's so much respect for those guys.
Love it.
But I think first of all, thank you for doing this,
Mm,
because we have got to elevate the game and keep getting better. But
that's
I
right.
think a lot of the things we talked about, for me at the young age, occasionally when I had time, I'd be at a big facility where there's all ages. Like there's a place called West Urban here in Wichita,
Okay.
and I'd be at the high school field. But sometimes, as you know, games get pushed back. Well, I would just walk around and watch go see all the ages,
Hmm.
6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old. And it was so fun for me to go out and watch that. But my deal, and I give this, and it kind of stuns some people because they know how competitive, I am and Gene is and our record. My big deal is enjoy the journey.
Mm,
Yes, teach the game, the mechanics, the fundamentals, the playing catch the proper way, the mechanics of pitching, the mechanics of playing shortstop, catching, whatever. So teach the game. But I think if you don't make it fun, you're
mm,
going to lose people along the way.
that's right.
I think you have got to enjoy the journey, and you enjoy the journey by guys looking forward on a 102-degree July day in Stillwater or Wichita, and you can't wait to get to the park.
Yeah.
Okay, it's what I call Little League mentality. When you're in Little League, you get on your bike, you have your glove on your
Mm,
handlebars,
like that.
you probably got your Mickey Mantle rookie card and the spokes of the
Woo!
wheels going down the road, and you're like, man, 30 years later, you're like, what happened to
Dang
those
it.
baseball cards? Where
Yep.
were in the spokes of my car
Yep.
or my bicycle? I'm sorry. But anyway, it was fun. And I always said, don't lose the simple. Yes, I get it. There's analytics, which I do think some piece. I think you can get too far with it.
Sure.
But I always laugh and I say, Little League, I say, you know, if you get a bad hop in Little League and it pops you in the face or whatever, you're not worried about it because you've never seen a good hop. You
Good.
know,
Yep. That's right.
so it's just you go play, and you know where to play in the outfield because there's a little bare spot
That's right.
because everybody's playing there. So I know I'm kind of oversimplifying it, but my point being, man, don't ever lose that joy for the game, the Little League mentality.
I love
You
that.
go for the love of the game, and you got guys playing at vacant lots on off days. I don't think you see that as much now, but you've got to make it fun. Now, here's the other thing, and I know I get some pushback from some people on this, but Gene was big on this too. We were big on playing all sports.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that say he was a big time quarterback, and we signed him the summer before. And they say, well, I guess you don't want me to play football now. We go, we 100% want you to play
Wow.
football. And we
Yes.
want you to play hoops and whatever your sport is.
Yeah.
Don't give that up, because I think the cross training, or whatever term you want to use, is so valuable. You learn to compete,
Yes.
and you learn to, to the pressure of, okay, there's Stillwater High School is playing Jinx on a Friday night, and it's a big deal. There's value in that. So just play all the sports, have fun, but enjoy the journey.
Boy, that's good stuff, coach. That's really good stuff. Because the journey is, in reality, it's the most fun part. I wanna finish with this because I'm just curious. I got, while I have you and my opportunity to talk with you, I'm curious what kind of music you listen to. Like, what do you listen to when you're going down the road? Maybe you're sitting at the house. What kind of music does Coach Kemnitz listen to?
What a great question. I love that. Okay, every Tuesday from 8:25 to 8:45, which is today,
Let's
I'm on
go.
the radio. I've had a segment for years on
Really?
KGSO with Doug Downs.
Okay.
Okay. And it's sometimes we get to sports, sometimes we don't. But to get to my point, he has my walk-up music every day. Today it was the Doobie Brothers, The Doctor. And that
Woo!
was so good because that was written in '89 when we won the national championship. But my first concert was at the Marriott in Oklahoma City, Three Dog Night. Okay.
Ooh,
My
ooh.
second concert was the Doobie Brothers. So when you get into '60s and '70s music, it's priceless. Now I can get into some country. Gene Stephenson loves country. He kind of got me into that a little bit. But a lot of those, Rod Stewart, Maggie May, a
Yes.
little Archie Sugar, a little Steppenwolf.
Wow.
It's the stuff from those days. Now I do like I don't know. I get a hard time sometimes. One of my songs was Black Eyed Pea, and the
Oh
guy
yeah.
Doug down said, "Dude, I'm not going to play Black Eyed Pea." I said, "Man, I'm trying to be versatile." But I'd say a lot of those oldies but goodies from the '60s and
Man.
'70s, and it does get into country a little bit with Charlie
Yeah.
Pride and Charlie
Oh yeah.
Rich, and then you get into the '90s, Alan Jackson, George Strait.
Mm.
So I got a little versatility, but I'd say '60s and '70s for me is practice.
Man, Coach, you'd be proud of me. I grew up in Colorado Springs, and my mom, I remember we'd go driving down the road every day. Oldies 92.9. Man, I can't get over it. And all I listen 60s on 6 and 70s on 7 on Sirius XM. I got to know. So like Three Dog Night, I'm thinking Mama told me not to come. Eli's coming. Do you have a favorite Three Dog Night song?
100%. Never been to Spain.
Ooh,
Okay.
yes, sir.
But
Yes,
yes,
sir.
Joy to the World and yeah, Eli's coming. Those are all great. But
Oh,
my favorite's Never Been to Spain. And
great.
one more quick story.
Yeah.
Every Sunday I do what they call cryotherapy. Have you ever heard of cryotherapy?
Oh yeah, the cold stuff, right?
Yes, I get in this chamber for 3 minutes and it's like 230 degrees below zero. And one of our boosters told me about it. I go, dude, you're going to love it. I go, 230 below zero?
Wow.
Are you kidding me? But here's what saves me. They let you play a song. So I pop in one of my songs that are normally roughly 3 minutes. It makes the time go fast.
Good
But
Lord.
just last, Tuesday, Sunday, it was like Never Been to Spain, Three Dog
Man.
Night. But yeah, that's my go-to. That was my favorite song in high school.
Boy, I love that song. I love Three Dog Night. I love that I can have that conversation with you.
Yes.
Coach Kemnitz, like truly, sir, what an honor. I want to repeat it because it's worth repeating. What you did for the game of baseball, I mean, just seriously, thank you. What Coach Stephenson did, what Wichita State meant to the game of baseball, like, know that there are guys like me that fell in love with the game because of guys like you and what you guys were doing. So I want to say this. I'll let you have a final say, and then I'll wrap us up. And I can't thank you enough for your time, Coach.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This went quick. I don't know how long we went, but once I get on my little rants, I was talking to Willie yesterday, and I said, I was saying, Willie, I got a little Gary Ward in me. If he asks me one question, I may roll. He started laughing. But for me, I think it's just the ability to give back. Because I mentioned Tom Borland, Stillwater American Legion. I mentioned Bill Brown, my Perry, Oklahoma guys, guy like Hector Tovar, my Little League coach. And when you talk to guys and you say, who was your Little League coach? Most of them immediately get a smile on their face.
That's right.
Because it's truly the love of the game and it's priceless times. So I'm blessed to still be working here at 68. Like I say, my brain's 23. But I think the message I would give people, first of all, thank you for having me and thank me for what you're doing, but just give back. And it's all about relationships. And if you can empower somebody and make a difference for somebody, like if I get an email or something from a young guy or gal wanting to get into sports, I call them.
Wow.
And they're like, what? You're calling me? I go, yeah, why would I'm not a techie email guy. I just pick up the phone and call them. But I just think we're blessed to, I haven't gone to work one day in my life.
That's amazing.
Well, I take that back. My dad owned a service station in Perry, Oklahoma. I went in the 60s and 70s. I went to work a lot. Okay. And it's still the longest running service station in Oklahoma. My brother runs it.
Yes. Really? Wow.
You need to make a road trip to Perry to see it. But that was work for me. It was a great tool on, taking pride in what you do and all those things. But in my coaching career, I've been blessed. But just give back, build relationships, and help young people.
I love it. Coach Brent Kemnitz, Wichita State University, episode 62 of the Baseball Forward podcast. We'll see you guys soon.